Gobble gobble once again, motherfuckers. It's Thanksgiving here in Podville. I'm Matisse Van Rossum. I'm just thankful for my boys.
I'm Ben Sheets, and I'll show you what to be thankful for.
I'm Cleveland Mosier, and I'm thankful for bad movies.
I'm also thankful for bad movies, and on this most glorious day of turkeys and cranberry sauce and stuffing, we stuffed ourselves with maybe one of the most baffling films I've seen in a long time. Today, we're going to be talking about the film Pilgrim, which is a part of Hulu's Into the Dark series, directed by Marcus Dunstan and stars Rain Edwards, Kerr Smith, Courtney Hengeler, and Peter Giles. It is the story of a young woman who invites reenactors to produce an authentic first Thanksgiving for her family and friends. However, things take an unexpected turn when the actors refuse to break character.
Big quotes. They claim this is based on a true story.
Yeah, that was weird, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I guess I thought they were like pulling a Coen Brothers with Fargo. I guess.
Before we get into the details of the film specifically, let's talk a little bit about Into the Dark. Into the Dark is a monthly series collaboration between Hulu and Blumhouse. The idea is that every month they release a horror film that is somehow loosely tied to the biggest holiday of that month.
Yeah, it's a weird hybrid between TV and film in a lot of ways, because it is, a monthly show essentially.
But the film, but they are feature-length films.
Yeah.
I have been seeing ads for these things for a few months now. This is the first one I've watched. I don't know too much about the deal between Hulu and Blumhouse, but if they're releasing a film every single month, I can't imagine how quickly they throw these things together. And I think that this film is a really excellent example of that. Marcus Dunstan, who made this film, is also the writer and director of The Collector and The Collection.
Two movies that are incredibly dated.
Yes, extremely.
They are like the epitome of mid-2000s editing and cinematography style.
I loved The Collector when it came out when I was a teenager.
Yes,
it was one of
when
my...
we were wee lads. Did we see it together in the theaters?
We might have. Maybe. It seems like Marcus Dunstan has not changed his filmmaking style much since The Collector.
Honestly, if you told me this was a time capsule and they just pulled this movie out of the ground from a mid-2000s box, I wouldn't have been surprised, because the style of this movie... I think it's fair to call it a fever dream.
Yeah, well, what the impression that I got is, like I was saying, this is obviously not a very high-budget film. They're cranking these things out. They got to have one every month. So I would imagine that they probably shot this film over a weekend, maybe.
I would go as far as say likely over a weekend and also very drunk. I hope so anyway. Like, when you have a movie that's like this slapdash and fun, I hope at least the crew was having a good time while they were making it. And I got the vibe they were. Say what you want about the movie, and I have plenty of things, but it does give you the vibe that they're like, who gives a shit? Let's just make a movie. And I sometimes find that endearing.
It definitely feels like who gives a shit.
Yeah, they obviously do not care.
That is absolutely the vibe I got off of this. There's a healthy degree of
self-awareness,
but I also feel like a lot of it is derived from laziness or maybe just not having the time. If I had to guess, I would say that they had about a weekend to get this thing shot, and when they went to rent their equipment, the only camera package they had available was X Games because bizarrely the entire film is shot with a fisheye lens.
Yeah, let's unpack that. That's a big one.
It's incredibly distracting.
Well, it's funny. I think you mentioned it at one point, Tease, where you said this kind of looks like a skateboarding video.
Hence why I think they ended up with an X Games camera package.
Because not only do you get the fisheye all the time. You also get this camera work that's constantly moving all over the place.
For little
and
to
the
no
combination of the two is just one of the most disorienting.
And it's edited really quickly and frenetically.
Yeah, if you have motion sickness, this is not the movie for you.
Yeah, I have astigmatism, and my glasses already like automatically correct for fisheye. So when I then am adding an additional fisheye on top of that, it makes me ill. I had a migraine after this movie. I had to go home and lie down.
It's bad to watch.
It's not great. Maybe like 4 shots in the movie that don't have a fisheye lens, which leads me to believe that it was artificially created too. Hard to say, but
well,
like
it's bizarre when those shots come up because those seem like an accident because the rest of the movie is shot with it. But the one distinction I want to make is between a movie like this and a movie like Crank 2. Where the frenetic camera work and stuff in Crank 2 works because it is a kinetic action movie.
Right.
In this movie, we get that same kinetic camera work with a lot of people standing around and doing normal things.
That's the thing.
Passive dialogue sequences
and
where
the
nothing ever
juxtaposition
happens.
just does not work, and it makes it truly feel like a fever dream.
Right. I mean, in terms of, like, the film's only, like, 80 minutes long, but it's a relative slow burn. Like, there's not really any action until, like, the last 30 minutes. So the entire first good chunk of the movie, first almost 2/3 of the movie, is talking, mostly.
Yeah, it's just dialogue.
But it's shot and edited like an action scene.
I mean, I counted, and during like one of the opening party like sequences where there's just a few people milling around inside the house chatting about how they're going to get some pilgrims to come over for Thanksgiving, they only ever held on any single shot for a second. Boom, 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 boom. It kept up that pace for the entire film.
When it's not cutting, it's panning or tracking, and with the fisheye, the motion is hyper exaggerated because the edges of the frame are just warped.
Well, and we talked about this a little bit with our Shining episode with wide angle or fisheye lenses. From distances, if you have wide shots, they make the area seem very expansive. But if you go in on someone and get a close-up on someone, it distorts them and makes their face look very strange and inhuman almost.
And it can be
an effect.
It can be a great stylistic choice for effect in something like Crank or like Angst or something like that, to momentarily sort of dehumanize a character. It can work really well. Mm-hmm. But when every single shot of the film is that, I notice it has the same kind of greenish tint fluorescent lighting as those like mid-2000s horror movies, very much like Saw or like The Collector, something along those lines. And when most of the movie is just rich white yuppies in their suburban house, and you have all of this like extreme stylistic effect, it's impossible to wrap your brain around. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
That kind of fever dreams aesthetic is one of my favorites. Like, I love Midsummer. I love films that do that. But
they do it with intention.
And intention, effect, and subtlety. And I love bombast. You know, like listen to our review of Maximum Overdrive. Like, bombast is great, but this is like driving a car with just exclusively like nitrous injection the whole time. The engine burns out in the first 5 minutes.
Right.
Like you need to save that nitrous injection for that like prime key moment. You know, the big climax. Don't run nitrous the whole race. You won't finish the race. And this movie suffers from that dramatically.
If they wanted to strap on the fisheye in the third act of the movie, when the Pilgrim cult turns the family's house into like a Thanksgiving haunted house, from a set design perspective, that's exactly what it looks like. Okay, fine. Fuck it. Yeah. Strap on that fisheye.
Because that's when we enter a fever dream.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
The juxtaposition would be so much less jarring.
That's when it becomes nightmarish. But when our teenage protagonist is just shit talking her stepmom at the dinner table, 1 second cuts and distorted vision is not a matching aesthetic.
No, you can't even focus on the dialogue. It's like it's pulling you away so dramatically.
And there's so many times where they'll like place an actor in like the third of the shot or something, but that's right where the fisheye distortion begins. So it's like your main focus is there, but then the person off to the side is like warped to the side. It's like, what? It looks terrible. It looks so bad. It looks so bad.
Amateuristic.
Yes, completely amateur. Like, if I didn't know that Marcus Dunstan had made stuff before this, I would have thought that this was a film student that Blumhouse threw $20,000 or something.
Well, it's like in art, you know, like you'll see a student who draws something poorly and there's like eraser marks and like the paper is scarred and it looks objectively poor. And then the student says, it's my style. And it's like, no, like style is different. You know, style comes with control and effect.
Style is not accidental.
Right. And like that separates the professional from the amateur.
Well,
and
almost
like,
worse is I feel like it was kind of purposeful. It just didn't have any intent behind it.
Yeah, you're
you know,
Well, that's why I said earlier that it has the hallmarks of laziness. It feels like they did it because they couldn't be bothered to do something better and then try to justify it as like, oh, it's a wacky, self-aware Thanksgiving slasher film. So who cares if it looks like shit? It's like, well, it looks like shit in a way that makes your film hard and bad to watch.
yeah.
there's no sincerity to it. It doesn't feel like they're earnestly going out to make something that's absurd or
Right.
crazy. Just feels like they're kind of half-assing it. That being said, I do want to emphasize that this movie was one of the most entertaining watches I've had in a little
Yeah,
while.
let's get into the good.
Yeah, we've addressed the aesthetic and what the entire film looks like. Let's talk about what actually happens
Yeah.
in the film. Do you want to start, Ben?
Yeah, so this family is having a bit of a Thanksgiving party. The stepmom, who the daughter has a beef with for some
Absolutely
reason,
hates.
she decides, oh, I want to have an authentic Thanksgiving party, so I'm gonna invite these Pilgrim reenactors to stay at my house for
Yeah.
days.
It feels very much like a yuppie upper middle class housewife who's neglected by her husband and disrespected by her children, who is looking for something fun to bring the family together, a new experience.
The most baffling part is inviting these people to stay at your house for multiple days is like a Troll 2 level
Well,
weird
no, that's the thing. She doesn't invite them to stay for multiple days. She invites them to come on Thanksgiving and set up their authentic recreation. They show up days beforehand and say, we need a few days to be prepared. And she's like, oh, yeah, sure, you can stay here and your friend can stay at my friend's house and you can make her Thanksgiving
that was
too.
one of my favorite parts, that she just pawned off one of them to her friends without, asking her whatsoever.
Yeah, they're having a little house party, and then the Pilgrim actors arrive.
There's just two of them at first.
Yeah.
There's the leader, Ethan, and his lady friend, Patience.
And the suburban mom just turns to her friend and says, oh, by the way, I offered one of these two Pilgrim actors your home to stay in.
Right.
without, like, and just right then and there, like, who the fuck does that? Like, oh yeah, this stranger's gonna live in your home for a while. And like, she doesn't say no. The friend, like, is like a little, like, put off by it, but not enough. It's not a real human interaction by any means.
No, it's not. Well, I mean, that's the thing. Our protagonist, Cody, the teenage daughter, she seems to be the only person in the entire film who is, like, rightfully put off by these weirdos who are completely sinister and will not break character at all and just, like, show up and invite themselves into people's houses. She's the only one who's like, hey, we don't know these people. This is fucking weird. You should not let them
She's
stay
the only
here.
one in the movie who acts semi-human.
Yes.
Like, who makes semi-rational decisions. For example, the dad in the movie
Oh my
is
God.
constantly looking at his phone to trade on the foreign exchange, like he's buying Iraqi dinars to sell at 3 in the morning.
Yeah, totally neglectful of his wife, not at all paying attention to what's going going on.
You know, like that's fine. That's a common archetype in film, but that's literally all the character is.
Well,
We've seen it a million times.
Where it gets to an even higher level with him is when more pilgrims start showing up inexplicably. One of the first times we realize this is that one of the characters walks into the dad's office and there's like 4 big, like beardy pilgrim looking guys in there. And he's like, they're going to help me rebuild the garage and move my office out there. What?
Well, and at a certain point, we just see him smoking a big old pipe.
Right, he's smoking like a fucking hobbit pipe in his office with these strange men who we haven't seen before. And he's like, these guys are going to help me rebuild the garage. Isn't that great?
And personally, I see this as a huge plus. This is all very like we were laughing
way,
our asses
way
off.
funnier.
Like,
yeah,
I enjoyed it. Here's the thing: low effort comedy is a tightrope walk if there ever was. Low effort comedy can come across as very funny.
Yeah.
When done right. But, you know, you gotta walk that line. And this movie occasionally does it quite well. And it's very funny where they're just like, oh, who gives a shit? Why do we need to explain the pilgrims showing up? And I love that. I thought that was hilarious.
No, I thought that was really funny, too, because, like, at that point, fuck it.
Yeah,
like,
right? Who cares?
When the first two just show up and things are still somewhat within the realm of reality, Ethan just goes in the back and just builds a shed. Just, you know,
because
yeah,
and it has nothing in it, and the only time we see him using it is to hang around with the small child,
with the little boy. Yeah, strong Epstein vibes coming off of that.
Yeah, spooky pilgrim man
he just shows up at their house and builds
no good diddling kids.
A kitty diddling shed in the back. There's never anything in the shed. At one point later, they slapped a red light inside the shed
for some reason. Well, that's indicative
for the aesthetic.
One of the several moments in this movie where the bizarre production choices kind of accentuated the absurdity of things. Well,
once the pilgrims take over the house, like it turns into like your generic $15 haunted house.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
But Thanksgiving themed.
But like the fisheye thing, for example, I was pissed off about it at first, but as the movie went on, it just kind of accentuated the absurdity of the events going on.
It starts to fit the film 40 minutes in.
But also, there's a sequence later on where they're at like the Thanksgiving dinner table and this big dramatic tense scene is going on and there's like a live gospel song playing in the background.
Yeah. What was that?
Yeah, you can hear the audience applause.
Yeah, you can hear the audience clapping in the audio track.
Yeah.
What the fuck was that?
One of the most bizarre choices I've seen in a while.
The composer had a weekend to put this shit together and like had to find whatever free licensing Thanksgiving related music he could find, and he made a bad choice even then. Like, ooh, yikes.
Well, you mentioned earlier, Cleveland, that there's like a handful of shots in the movie. I mean, like four or five shots that are starkly contrasted with the rest because they do not have the fisheye.
Yep.
But the confusing thing about that is those few shots are all at the Thanksgiving dinner scene when all of the pilgrim cultists are like eating the dad. Of all of the scenes to not use the fisheye, the absurd, nightmarish fever dream horror scene, that's where you use the fisheye the whole time.
So I have one of two theories for this.
Okay.
Either they started with that scene, shooting that first, and their lens broke 4 shots in.
That could
or
be.
They went back for reshots.
Yeah. That's probably it. They went in for reshoots, and when they went to rent their equipment that time, they couldn't get the X Games package.
Or the maybe like that camera ran out of battery for a moment.
How few of those shots that there are make them stand out even more.
Well, and the thing is, it seemed like the same camera, it just a different lens.
Yeah, and that's why I wonder like if it was just like a shoddy digital effect.
Well, if it was a digital effect, they could easily put it on the other ones.
That's the thing. That's what makes it so
confusing.
they
just lazily missed a couple or something.
I'm not saying...
that's why I'm thinking that.
I'm not saying you're wrong. And in fact, if that is the case, if the fisheye effect is an after effect and not a lens, that is way worse.
Oh, yeah.
That is way worse.
Oh, wholeheartedly agree. There's no good answer, whatever speculation we might have. And the thing too is like when the fisheye is actually applicable and fitting, my problem with it is by then it's worn out its welcome so much I'm already getting a headache. It's just detracting from the fun parts of the movie.
Yeah.
What a bizarre choice though. Ugh. And with such an absurd movie,
it feels like it's trying to ride the line between something completely fuck it self-aware like Thanksgiving and like a more serious slasher film like The Collector. It's really entertaining, but it's just so disjointed. It's very, very bad. It's
rough.
It is rough. I'm glad the movie is only 80 minutes because while I did have fun watching it, I think I might have died if it was much longer.
Well, and it's tough for me to even recommend this as like a movie to watch while drunk and rowdy with friends, because if you're drunk, you're going to throw up after you see this movie.
Yeah, I have a hard time recommending this as well. Like, maybe just like right now for the season. Yeah. Like if you really
in the background, don't pay attention to it.
If you really want a wacky Thanksgiving horror movie to watch
Thanksgiving.
Well, right, watch Thanksgiving or watch Blood Freak, you know, but if you don't have access to those or have seen them already, I mean, this one's on Hulu. I mean, you can get at it pretty easy. I want to talk about the cucking stool.
Good. Okay. That was next on my list as well.
So basically the whole idea behind this Thanksgiving cult is that they take things away from people to make them appreciative for what they have.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. So, I mean, it is Saw, but Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
You know, same motivations as Jigsaw, but holiday themed. All of the punishments and stuff have to be, I use this term extremely loosely, period accurate.
Oh my God, yeah. It's, easing into the cucking stool, we're set up to believe that these actors are hell-bent on authenticity. You know, in the previous episode, I got into like my love for historical accuracy, and obviously like going into this movie, I wasn't expecting much of anything with that. Even when they say that in the dialogue, I'm like, that's fine or whatever. But right off the bat, when the pilgrims enter, we get panning shots and cuts of their shoes and the hats, and it's like grade school level like pilgrim costumes.
Yeah,
I'm talking plastic buckles
big
and
plastic
hats.
buckles.
Yeah. Like, I'm not even looking for period accurate clothing. Like, I'm fine with the buckles and hats, but can they not be plastic? Like, really? Like,
but they want to.
It's easier. Like, just do buckles.
Well, that's almost funnier to me that they're just cheap reenactors that take it way too seriously.
Right. They take it very seriously, but they obviously haven't done enough of their own research to like really be convincing. But what the whole thing reminded me a lot of was that old episode of South Park where they go to the Pioneer Village where none of the villagers break character, even when they're being held up by by criminals.
Oh my God. It's such an old episode, yeah.
It is, and I mean, maybe too deep of a cut for some of our younger listeners, if we have any, but like, I could not stop thinking about the fucking thieves having a gun to the guy's head and like, tell us the key to the code to the safe. I don't know nothing about it. I'm just a simple blacksmith. And they blow his brains out.
Oh my God. So much better done. If we're being real, too. Like, of course.
Yeah.
So,
the cucking stool.
The cucking stool, yeah.
Roundabout way to get back to the cucking stool.
Here's actually where they actually did some homework. This is where I get so, like, kind of delightfully confused. It's like, we have the plastic buckles and hats, but the climactic torture device of the movie, when they bring out our protagonist and, you know, it's time for her to be tortured until she's thankful, they declare, bring out the cucking stool, and they take her into their suburban backyard that's been retrofitted to an odd haunted house Thanksgiving theme.
Unmotivated colored lights. Mm-hmm. Can't tell what source they're supposed to be coming from. I believe there's a fog machine as well.
Oh yeah, the lighting's a mess.
Yeah, it's all over the place.
And when they said bring out the cucking stool, I think we all had a moment where we're just like, did they say that right?
We all
like,
looked
what?
at each other and said, cucking stool.
Yeah, like there's no way he said that. Maybe he said, bring out the fucking stool. Like, what's going on? And so I quickly Googled on my phone the cucking stool, and it's a real thing. Surprisingly, they did a good job of depicting it. Like, it looks like the cucking stools, like, from that era, which were used to specifically, like, punish women for whatever stupid, dated bullshit. But,
We're
like,
showing their ankles after 6:30 p.m.
exactly, like that kind of, horrible battle days stuff. They're as elaborate as what we see in the movie. I mean, I guess points for that.
It's a chair on a big wooden lever.
Like a jib.
Yeah, exactly, like a jib, and they strap the protagonist into it, and then they dunk her up and down in the swimming pool until she's grateful.
Yep. Or until she says she's grateful so she can get out of the situation.
I will say, to this film's credit, I thought pretty much all of the kills were quite fun.
Yes.
They somehow managed to make all of the horror and the violence Thanksgiving appropriate.
Yeah, well,
which I didn't think they would be able to do.
They relish in the absurdity a lot of the time. Like,
that's
for
where
example,
the film gets stronger.
With Patience at the other house.
The friend's house, yeah.
She poisons the mother with tea. We see her, like, using a butter churner and blood is just coming out.
Yeah, just, like, sitting in a room, just, like, staring at a wall, just, like, ferociously manhandling a butter churner.
I don't know about you guys, but I just assumed there was a head in there or something that she was churning. But nope, later we cut to her and she's just, like, dead on the floor.
Yeah, the mom's just dead on the floor. I think the more I think back to that scene, I think what it's supposed to be is that she's churning the butter so ferociously that her hands are bleeding, and that's what the blood is from.
Well, but it's like coming up from it. Like
it's definitely
it's like the
coming
thing
up.
is full of blood. Is the vibe
I think
that
she just chucked some of her guts in there. Or something.
But we see the mom's
The whole
body, and she
body.
just has like a head wound. Like she's I don't.
It's called They Didn't Think It Through.
Damn.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the answer. And
You're probably right.
let's not gaze into the void on that too much deeper. I think it's a futile attempt. The churning is hilarious.
Yes. They bring back the poisoning stuff in a really fun way as well later on at the Thanksgiving.
Our family fights back against the Pilgrim cult. At that point, I was mostly just experiencing white noise, so I feel like I missed something narratively. When did she get the herbs to poison them?
When she went over to the neighbor's house and she found her dead boyfriend.
Okay. And she took the herbs.
Then we don't see her take the herbs. Or there's nothing hinted towards that, but that's when she takes them.
Sure,
Wait, she like crushes the. It's not that she takes the herbs from the house. It's the cherry pits, I guess.
No, she did literally put the herbs in and showed it afterwards.
So it's both. Because we saw her do the cherry pits, too. He says, like, oh, the cherries, or the cranberries, or whatever.
Well, yeah, they have her using a mortar and pestle to make cranberry sauce, and we see her grab a couple of cherries.
Pits,
Are cherry pits like apple seeds? They have
are
arsenic.
Poisonous, but
you need a fuckload of them.
She literally put some of the herb in there as well. It shows a close-up of her dropping it in.
Word.
That feels
so
like
it's both.
Yeah, why do both? Why not just pick one? That seems unnecessary.
Well, also, why did she grab the herb from the house? Did she think it was like weed or something?
Yeah, well,
she has no contact.
She wouldn't have known what it was.
Yeah.
Props to her for thinking like, oh, if I grind up some cherry pits in with the cranberry sauce, then there'll be arsenic and there'll be poison. Like, okay, that's kind of clever, but to not just do that, but to also have her grab herbs that she has no context for and also just throw those in, that's pretty confusing.
It's nonsense.
I do love that it leads to all of the Pilgrim cult running around throwing up blood all over the house.
Right, well, before that, too, the big reveal of what the meat is at the feast is it's the dad. And they did the cheesy, like, head under the, like, body under the table, the head surrounded in lettuce. Like, it's as low effort as it gets, and I respect the shit out of that.
I found that quite charming,
That's
actually.
wonderful low effort comedy. And then we get get like a wonderful sequence of all the pilgrims like eating the dad and like, you know, getting off on it. And
laughing maniacally while the family screams.
Yeah. And then we have our big reveal. She's poisoned all the sauce or whatever. And then we have them all vomiting blood. And it's, again, comical. They have the fake hose hooked up to the lead pilgrim, and he's just spraying blood out. And it's delightful.
I love how hard Patience is to kill, that no matter what they do to her, she keeps being
a spike in her head. What is it?
Yeah, I think it's like the turkey carving fork or something.
Yeah, thin one.
Yeah, and they stab her in the head. Well, they pin her hand to her head, but it goes like all the way into her skull.
Yeah, like through her hand into her head.
And Ethan like pulls it out, and she just like sprays a big gout of blood from the hole in her head. She's like, I'm fine.
And then continues to be evil.
Yeah, continues to run around trying to kill them. And I mean, she gets poisoned too, and she's also running around throwing up blood and leaking blood from the massive hole in her skull. And, you know, she's in it to win it. I respect it.
Yeah.
I respect that.
It's a hardy girl.
I respect that.
Speaking of, for about half the film, I was very confused because I knew I'd seen that actress who played Patience in something else before, and I figured out she's one of the in-laws in Ready or Not who keeps accidentally shooting people with the crossbow.
Yes.
So
yes. I wouldn't have noticed that unless you had pointed it out.
And I thoroughly enjoy her performance in both films. Like she's great.
She's great.
She really, you can tell she goes all in. Like even in like a silly movie like this, she puts in effort like into her performance, even if it's hammy.
Her and Peter Giles, who plays Ethan, the main pilgrim, I think they both ham it up to a really, really delightful degree.
Ethan spends the whole film doing this like weird like Liam Neeson impression, and
yes.
It was very fun.
When they first opened the door, I thought it was Matthew Modine in a wig. I'm glad it wasn't, although that would have been pretty funny. But like, yeah, you're right. He does like this strange Liam Neeson impression the entire movie, and he is just so insanely over the top, like Dick Dastardly over the top. I thought that was really delightful.
Oh yeah, there's a couple, especially towards the end when they're really losing it. He has a multiple just hammy, maniacal laugh, snidely whiplash moments, and I loved all of those. One last thing, how this film tries to play the climax off as potentially a dream sequence, but is so ambiguous and unaware of itself that it makes no statement at all. The movie starts with them having the family just having their own little dinner and them breaking a wishbone.
Oh, the wishbone! I forgot about that.
Yeah, like we see them break a wishbone, and she doesn't say what she wishes for, but it's revealed that she's
well, you
wishing...
hear it in voiceover.
Oh, that's right, they do
as
that
she breaks the
sequence.
Wishbone. It's after she's been told that they're bringing in these pilgrim reenactors. She wishes, I wish the whole thing will blow up in your stupid face.
Yep, and oh boy, does it. Be careful what you wish for.
Does it ever. Be thankful for what you have.
Mm-hmm. But I have to keep in mind that one could make the argument that, oh yeah, the whole movie is a dream sequence. Like the wishbone breaks, she has a wish or whatever, and she's sent into this dream realm. Like it's like a labyrinth situation. I even made that joke when they break the wishbone, and I was like, you know, haha, I wish my brother was taken away by the Goblin King. You know, it's
basically
be careful what you wish for thing.
Yeah,
and it ended up being that. But the film ends with Ethan revealing, like after she's become thankful through all of her horrible events or whatever, that he has that same wishbone in his pocket, implying that he's some sort of supernatural event. But
he's the Krampus.
The movie's fisheye.
He's Thanksgiving Krampus.
Yeah, like the dream sequency stuff is going on the entire movie, like before the wishbone breaking, before all of the rest of it. So like there's no cueing in or foreshadowing of like when or how reality is broken or what occurs. So the whole thing just feels like a poor like Goosebumps special. Like,
well, that's the thing. I don't think it's as much of a dream sequence as it just is Thanksgiving Krampus.
Yeah, I don't think it's. I didn't read it as it was supposed to be a dream, but I did feel like I was having a fever dream while I was watching it.
Absolutely.
totally devoid of logic. It's important to mention that this is not happening like in some like isolated country house, like out in the middle of nowhere. Like we see where it is. It's on like a cul-de-sac. Like this is a suburban neighborhood, and the climax of the film is 24 pilgrim cultists dunking a screaming girl into a swimming pool on a massive cucking stool. And like the neighbors would hear all of this at some point. Like
And he even says like, go ahead and scream or something.
Right,
or
at one
like,
point, well, oh my God, totally forgot. He locks the parents up in stockades out in the backyard by the pool. And whips the dad's back and brands the mom with a B, which was weird.
I guess it's a thing.
B for yeah, you said that during the movie, and that kind of broke me a little bit. I was
B for Pilgrim.
I was already like, I could not stop thinking about that for the rest of the movie.
Maybe it's also like a period thing, who's a form of punishment, but they just don't explain it. So
I mean, it would
B
make
for
more
Pilgrim.
sense if it was an A, you know, like the Scarlet Letter for adultery.
I'm just trying to think of what it
what
would
could
be.
it have? What could it have been?
I'm sure we could look it up and find
B
like some
for,
context for it, maybe, or maybe
big
not. And maybe they
natural.
just, that's the branding iron they had. B for brand.
I don't think I want to know, honestly. I'm gonna choose to keep thinking that it's B for Pilgrim.
Yeah,
You don't
same.
see me searching anything on my phone. Like, no, yeah.
The mom is like screaming bloody murder when they're out there in the stockades. It's like the neighbor, somebody would have heard. Somebody definitely would have heard.
Well, like we do get a vibe that maybe the Pilgrims have taken over the entire neighborhood.
I didn't get that vibe.
We see like some character, I can't even remember who, like out on the street, and there are Pilgrims out there too, and like they are just everywhere.
That's actually,
But it's not well implied.
That's
Like,
actually
I can't even remember if
more-
that scene happened or not.
that's
Like,
a
it's
more
this
interesting
movie's so
concept.
loose.
I would love like if Cody escaped at some point and she like runs down the street to like try to get help and like
Yeah.
knocks
And
on
it
a
was like
neighbor's
an us situation.
right, and like
where-
knocks on a neighbor's door or something, and then just like a pilgrim lady opens the door. That would be hilarious.
Yeah.
That's more clever than what
of-
they did in the fucking movie.
Part of
Correct.
what I read early on in the movie, it's pretty well established that all of the neighbors hate the stepmom as well.
Yeah, she sucks
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, so I just assumed it was
They heard, didn't give a shit.
They were like, let her die.
Right,
You know?
the neighbors know what's going on and they just don't give a shit.
Yeah,
Again,
exactly.
A cut to that would have. A cut to that would have been great.
Literally anything.
anything. And like that's so little effort there, but oh well.
I thought it was really funny how they made a big deal about like the reason Cody hates Thanksgiving so much and why she's so adverse to this whole thing is because her mom abandoned them on Thanksgiving. And it's like we get like partial flashbacks to that, and it seems
But it's
like
never really concluded.
no, it never has any payoff. It seems like they're trying to like draw attention to it, like it's gonna be relevant somehow. Like, oh shit.
This time of year is always hard for her.
Or what if her mom is her real mom is one of the Pilgrim cultists? What if during the dinner, you know, she walks out and it's like, Mom is like, yeah, you weren't thankful enough, so I went off and joined this Pilgrim cult. It would have been fucking stupid, but it would have been funny as hell.
They never do anything with
No,
it.
they never do anything with it.
And it's like the opening shot of the film. It's like the setup with like the shot that they keep repeating with like panning up from the feet behind the chair.
Right.
And it doesn't really conclude in any way
No.
or clearly. Hey, just say something. Give me thing. Just so that you can put a bow on this movie and it doesn't just kind of end awkwardly.
I think it's funny that you mentioned that though, because I think a lot of my favorite parts of this movie were the most absurd parts. And I was almost wishing by the end that they pushed the absurdity even further.
Yeah.
Because I think they could have gone
Because they're obviously
way dumber and way more ridiculous.
right. They
with
obviously.
it.
I think it's laziness, man. I
Yeah,
really
you
do.
can only do so much with
I think
effort.
it's just they didn't have a whole lot to work with. They didn't have a whole lot of time, and they used the excuse of like self-awareness to get around that. But it never quite pushes any of those boundaries far enough. I mean, with a couple of things like the cucking stool is fun. The kitty diddling shed is weird.
The kills are goofy.
The kills are goofy.
The head, you know, with the lettuce.
But it's always,
fun.
but it's not quite there. I wish they would push it just a little bit farther. And I also just found I found Cody to be a very unpleasant protagonist. Like, I get that she's like the bitter teenage daughter who, like, you know, is ungrateful for what she has, like the whole Thanksgiving parable or whatever. I get that, but I found her like genuinely unpleasant to spend time with.
It's fine to have like an edgy protagonist, and you know, like her character is apparently going through a hard time in the film, but we
Give
never
me
see
something
like
to connect with.
any human, you know, like decency from her. Like she's kind of nice to her little brother.
She's nice to her little brother.
And
that's about it.
Yeah, and like the problems don't necessarily stem from the dialogue. Like I agreed with the majority of the things she was saying. Like,
well, right, she's only
just like, hey, look, I liked it when she was like drilling into Ethan about like his accuracy and stuff. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah,
like she even calls him out on how like some historical fact. We see her kind of like researching Pilgrims at one point so she can do that, and I liked that. Like that was fun. A lot of it comes down to just her mood the whole film. Like there's no arc with her. Like she's always in a shitty mood, like from the beginning to the end. There's nothing fun about her character in that respect.
That's the thing is,
but her being bitter about like the Native Americans and whatnot, is great. I think it needed to be said like in the movie, and like I think that's relatively well done, and coming from your protagonist, it's nice.
Like we said, she's the only one who makes human decisions in the movie, but she is just not a likable character. We have no sort of connection with her, and it's hard to root for her as a protagonist when she's just
a little comedic sarcasm.
Yeah,
you know, from her or something, just to like, so I can like this character.
Yeah.
Like, I definitely don't see it as like the actress's fault. I think she was working as well
she was fine.
what she had. Like she was doing all right. It just, yeah, the character itself is.
I thought all of the acting for the material they were working with was okay.
Yeah.
I thought the Pilgrims.
Passing grade.
I thought the Pilgrims were hammy enough to be enjoyable. Everybody else was fine. The script was not great. So like some of the dialogue was bad. I mean, and it's just like. Just the fucking editing, man. Like when you're trying to have character moments where like two characters are talking to each other and you're cutting to a different angle literally every second.
And they break the 180 rule a ton doing that.
Constantly breaking the 180 degree rule.
They do, don't they?
Yeah.
It's just so amateurish.
How can I even focus on the dialogue and the character building when this is happening?
Yeah.
Like I didn't see Bohemian Rhapsody, but that clip was going around Twitter for a while of like how bafflingly edited it was, and it's like this movie, like that made me think of it immediately when they were having that party
Feels
scene.
like the same editor almost.
It does. And didn't that film get nominated for an Academy Award for editing?
I believe it might have.
Man,
won.
I hope
win?
that trend dies, like that quick, like
Yikes,
YouTuber-y
dude.
editing, like it just let it die. Like
I mean,
it's so ADD, and
It's fine for action movies.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even then, I mean, there's a whole conversation
Sure.
about how like you actually can't see the fight sequencing, and like it's a way to hide.
I
poor
agree.
choreography.
I prefer, in terms of like fight scenes and action stuff, I prefer the John Wick approach.
I mean, without even genre-fying, just like
or the
for
Kung
intensity
Fu approach. Yeah,
you know, like for intensity in a sequence, it can work. But when the sequence isn't intense, you're building a house with only a hammer. Like, what are you doing?
I mean, this is just another great example of how dated the style of this movie is, because when was that style of like super rapid cut editing and handheld photography the most popular? Early to mid 2000s.
Well, it really gained its popularity from Gladiator and
from the Bourne movies.
Yeah. I was right, by the way, with Bohemian Rhapsody winning.
It did win. Oh my
which is
God,
the worst thing.
That's why I don't watch
ever.
That's why I don't watch the Oscars anymore.
We live in hell.
We truly live.
I hate that. I hate that, like, passionately. Like, I really hope that that trend of like quick shot editing fucking dies. Like it's needless.
Post MTV editing. I don't have as much of a problem with it as you guys, but it has a time and a place.
Yes, I agree.
Oh, absolutely.
And when you're shooting dialogue scenes,
it's
you
not
don't
for
need
dialogue
it. You don't
scenes.
need it.
It's not for dialogue scenes. No, I agree.
And it's definitely like to the detriment of like the actors in this movie, like trying to give like a funny ham-fisted performance or do everything they can with what they have. And I always appreciate that in bad movies, but here, like, I couldn't fucking tell you because it's just so distracting.
Well, that's the thing too, is I think in this movie, I think I would have liked the actors to be a little worse. once again, the Pilgrims were
the parents, yeah.
the Pilgrims were like what I wanted, but like the parents and like the kids, I think I would have found it more endearing if they were worse actors.
Yeah, pick a lane. Either, full on or full off.
Like with Troll 2.
Of course.
It's so fucking funny because they're such bad actors.
But they're trying
so
trying. Hard.
They're
And
trying.
everyone's trying hard. And like the
And
sincerity is so wonderful.
In this, aside from the Pilgrims, I didn't feel like anybody was trying that hard, and we were getting okay performances out of them,
So much of this movie, I think, could have been fixed on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, totally. Well,
I don't
when you're
know
working,
about that.
Nice the fisheye.
the editing could have been done very, very differently, and I don't know what the film would have been like, but with the fucking
It's
fisheye
speculation,
lens.
if it ever was.
Overall, I can't really say that I would recommend this film.
No.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed us watching it and making fun of it. Don't know if I would go back to it ever.
It's also for the most part, it's definitely turned me off from Into the Dark.
Well, that's the thing. I was today looking around at some like reviews online, and like a lot of reviews are saying like this is by far the best Into the Dark film so far.
Oh no.
Boy.
So Hulu considers it quote unquote television. We had 2 commercial breaks during this film.
Yes, we did.
And we saw the preview for their December Into the Dark. Don't remember what it's called, but it looked like
I have no memory of it.
it looked like a ripoff of Ready or Not, like a Christmas themed Ready or Not.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. The imitation was. Oh God, I completely forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the imitation was so clear.
Yeah.
Like it was Ready or Not, and like that.
But cheaper.
Big fucking finger
like,
wag at that.
Yeah, Ready or Not, but cheaper.
Yeah, just trying to cash in
and make it Christmas themed. Yikes. Hearing people say that Pilgrim is like the best Into the Dark that they've done so far. They haven't been doing it for long. I don't even think they've been doing it for all of 2019.
I think they've been doing it for more than a year. I think I saw that there was one for Thanksgiving last year.
Oh,
but it wasn't
shit.
Thanksgiving themed.
Fuck, they must have just not started advertising it until earlier this year, because I don't remember seeing anything for Into the Dark before like 6 months ago.
I didn't even heard about it until this movie.
So yeah,
I live under a rock, so.
Fuck, if this is the best they can do, then I would be miserable to see what they've done so far.
And like maybe they can turn it around. Maybe we can get something that is surprisingly well made.
You
Because
know-
like again, movies being shot in a weekend, not necessarily a detriment.
Well,
Like,
And what I will say too is that I'm not completely against the idea of Into the Dark, because
Same.
if you throw enough spaghetti at the wall, eventually something will probably stick.
and
if
it seems they're
Blumhouse-
giving it off, like each episode off to different directors.
If
So like it's not like they're just
Yeah.
making one.
That's
a month.
one of the charms of an anthology series is you're never locked in on the quality. It will change drastically from episode to episode.
Black Mirror is a great example.
Yeah.
Yes, and this one wasn't great, but maybe one of these
future.
times will be
Here's the
good.
thing, I'm not going to actively seek him out, but if I hear about one,
I'd say if Blumhouse is willing to keep throwing money at like smaller directors to give them a chance to make something unique and different, I'm all for that. This one was a pretty big miss of the mark, I think. And it seems like a lot of the others have been too. But that's not to say that something better won't come along out of it. Who knows? Maybe the next up and coming horror auteur will get their start with Into the Dark. I'm not holding out, but you never know.
Yeah.
You guys ready to rate?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll start. Some fun stuff. A wacky, wild ride. Thank God it wasn't more than 80 minutes. Got plenty of good laughs out of me, but...
And fairly consistently to its credit.
Consistently, sure. But man, the fucking fisheye, it makes it so unpleasant to look at, like so disorienting and uncomfortable. And I just don't think any of it was quite fun enough to make me want to come back to this film. It was fine. No. It was fine for a single viewing, but I don't feel like I'll ever really need to watch this movie again. I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 5.
I'm a little more positive with it. While it is a total fever dream with some of the most bizarre production choices I've seen in a while, I did have fun watching it with you guys, and I thought it was a fun experience. And even though I don't think it's a good movie, I think it is better than quite a few horror movies we've seen this year. I would say it's better than like The Perfection, you know?
Or Greta, I would say as well.
Or Glass, you know? Yeah. I'm going to give it a 2.5. I think it's not perfect. It's not even good, but it's not bad. It's not terrible. It's not egregiously avoid at all costs.
It's not insulting.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, this movie is a fever dream, but you could say the same for Mandy. Mandy's a fever dream. That's one of my favorite films. This movie is a poor fever dream.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, comparing the two, well, I'll stop there.
It's unfair.
It really is. Beyond that, really, just, I'm gonna ditto you, Ben. The laughs were great. It did give me a migraine, and so huge points off for that. And I think if you got rid of the fisheye and put a little bit more attention to the movie, and there was just a touch more effort in a few singular places, you know, slightly likable character. They're all minor things, but God, do they add up. And you could have had a 3 or even a 3.5 or 4 from me. Like, I tend to like low effort comedy, but man, not like this. So it's a 2.5. It's a 2.5. Almost a 3, but not worth the migraine, and I cannot recommend it.
All right. Well, that will give Pilgrim an average of 2.3 out of 5 pods. Now, boys, it is Thanksgiving, and I am thankful. I'm thankful for you guys and for this show, but we can't forget that this is America, and Thanksgiving is an American holiday founded on American principles of consumerism.
Yeah, it's Black Friday Eve.
It's Black Friday Eve, and I have things that I want to buy, so we need to get paid. So, Cleveland, who is our Thanksgiving sponsor for this week?
Well, I'm glad you asked, my friend. This week, we are being sponsored by... Have you ever wanted your butter churned more churnily? Have you ever been thankful, but not thankful enough for your butter? Well, now we're going to change that with Ethan's and Precious, or whatever the fuck her name is, deluxe Thanksgiving historically accurate bludder churner.
Bludder churner, you say?
That's right. This Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever the fuck, mix up your holiday with a nice bludder churner.
I'm a man with a very particular set of skills.
And that skill is butter churning.
And if you don't believe me, I will find you, and I will churn your butter. All right, that'll bring us to the end of this Thanksgiving extravaganza. Next week, it's going to happen for real this time. We're finally going to talk about Rock and Roll Nightmare.
Yes!
We've been trying to arrange this episode for months now, literally, and we finally gotten a hold of our guest. So next week, look for a special guest episode of the Pod People where we discuss Rock and Roll Nightmare.
That's right. We have locked in the rock.
And roll.
Nightmare.
Well, if you like the show and you're thankful for the show, then head on over to Apple Podcasts and give the gift of a 5-star review. We really appreciate it. We would be most thankful. You can also follow us on Twitter at PodPeoplePod or at letterboxd.com/PodPeoplePod for the list of all the films we've talked about on the show with our average ratings and links to those episodes. Getting close to list season, so we're going to be having a lot of stuff that you can check out on Letterboxd. So follow us preemptively. We'll be posting our year-end lists there after we do the episodes, of course. I have a new Twitter handle. You can find me on Twitter now at Deep State Ozzy.
Oh boy.
I'm at Mr. Sheets.
And I'm occasionally tweeting for Light Arc Studio as we continue to develop our wonderful spooky indie game, It Stares Back. Go check it out.
The Thanksgiving gift that keeps on giving. the spooks.
That's right.
Yeah, you can find that on Steam for $6 American at the time of recording. You can also join our Discord. You can find that on our Twitter account or at lightarcstudio.com. Do the ding dang thing. All right, well, we hope you're full of delicious foods, sweet potatoes, mac and cheese, collards, cranberry sauce, all of the good shit. I know I sure am. And we'll see you next week for a very special kind of nightmare, the rock and roll kind.
See you later, turkeys.
Bok bok!